or National Grange was that Syracuse had National Grange one year, and we were there, and there was a lot of people from California came, and they invited us to come to California, see if we could beat them. Edward, how many were there that went?
46.
46 of us went on a train to California to go to State Grange, or National Grange. And what a joy that was. We had fun, and every time we had to change trains or anything, they say, New York State's delegation, we'll go first. The rest of you remain seated. When it got time to go to the dining car, New York State Grange will go first. And we all had little trains with our names on them from New York State. Well, so much for that. Edward, I can't see what this is. Give me a little. Give me a bucket. I just had eye surgery.
No.
And this one is out of the eye that I can see you good, but I can't read. So if you think I look cockeyed, just forget it. Because I have had the lens out of one pair of glasses, so I can see. This one for reading, this one for seeing. Hopefully. This is going to do it. Some may ask, what is the Grange and why was it organized? Immediately following the Civil War, the southern states of our nation were in heavily devastated
Not that we can hear.
impoverished condition. Here. You can't hear it? Says she can't hear it. The southern states of our nation were in heavily devastated and impoverished condition. While making investigation of agricultural conditions in the war-torn South, Oliver Hudson Kelley conceived the idea that a fraternity of farm folks would restore our nations, both North and South, in a united effort to help farmers to help themselves. The first formal meeting of the Grange, also known as Patrons of Husbandry, was held in Washington, D.C. This was only a trial Grange. It was not until December 4th, 1867, now regarded as the birthday of this great order, that the formally organized meeting was held with William Saunders as master and Oliver Hudson Kelley as secretary. On March 8, 1868, Mr. Kelley was authorized to form Granges throughout the nation. The first Grange organized was in Fredonia, New York, in Chautauqua County. This Grange is still in operation, and the building is a landmark in Fredonia. It's a beautiful building, and they are still operating. Farmers realized that they were suffering many injustices and banded together to fight for their place in the many laws and actions carried out in the federal government. Granges in New York State were organized at a very fast pace. By 1875, there were 370 local organizations in this state, and that is from 1868, which is 7 years. Candor was a very active farming community at the time. Therefore, Candor Grange number 203 was organized in 1874, later to become dormant, only to reorganize again as number 1111 on May 7, 1907. This order also became dormant after a period of years. Farmers, being persistent and knowing they must band together for the betterment of agricultural and rural people, again met and organized the now Candor Grange number 1466 on April 19, 1920. And the charter is dated April 24, 1920, and it contains the name of 48 men and women. The first first master was Reed Powers, and the first secretary was Mrs. Melva Presonius. Renee was here, and it was her mother that was our secretary for a good many years. This organization grew rapidly. By the mid-1930s, the membership reached nearly 300 members, both men and women. And I might say that that's in the early 30s is when Edward and I began our journey to the Grange. We joined when we were 14. Our mothers and fathers were Grange members. And it was back when, you didn't have access to cars or gasoline and things like that, and couldn't afford to do anything else. We were all farm families, and the only thing we could afford to do was go to Grange on Saturday night, and we got our education and our inspirations and recreations there. And after Grange meetings, we always had a supper, used to pass, plentiful. We played quoits, which is played it on a board with round quoits, like you do horseshoes. Played that in competition with other Granges. And there's many funny instances about that. One of them is little Mary Anderson, Mrs. J. Anderson. She was short anyway, and she threw a quoit and it went up and hit the revolving fans. And how it embarrassed her, but we all had a big laugh. And another thing that we had in competition was, I can't think of the other, dart baseball, where we had a board with bases onto it and threw bats, or threw darts, and that's the way you progressed. And of course, we had our square dancing after the meetings. Nita Sharp, and I believe it was Art Richards to begin with, had the fiddle, and Dwight on his mouth organ, and my dad was the caller. And that's where us young people learned to square dance, because the older Grangers would break up their couples and take us and dance with us, and we still were dancing when we were able.
Those that weren't dancing were playing cards.
Yeah. And there was many contests in the Grange. And not to brag, but Edward and I were on the square dance team that went to State Grange one year. The next year, there was only one chosen from Tioga County Grange, and that was Edward and I. And we danced on a set with the older folks and real old folks from the New York City area. And we all had on these heavy, old-fashioned clothes and the bonnets. In the, huh?
1890.
We weren't there then.
No.
Clothes for the 1890s. And we were all dressed in these heavy clothes and fancy. And as I said, those people from New York City, they were wonderful to dance with. And one year we went as polka champions of county. And the year that we went as polka, Dr. and Mrs. John Jakes went as the waltz. Beautiful waltzers. And all this was taken on in the big Syracuse ballroom. And of course, for just kids and whatnot to go to a place like that, it was something, because you hardly ever got out of our own little neighborhoods. So much for that. We enjoyed that. Since the Grange is a family fraternity, children may join the junior Grange at the age of 5. When they have reached the age of 14, they may join and become an active and voting member of the subordinate Grange, which is the local Grange. All have the opportunity to become Pomona, which is Tioga County Grange, or county level, and then on to be affiliated with state and national Grange. Canada Grange became one of the most active organizations in the community. The Grange not only served as a place to discuss the problems of the rural area It was also an educational and recreation source. As one might recall, there was very little that a farmer and his family could afford to do. Grange on Saturday night was a source of enjoyment. The meeting always opened with an open Bible on the altar, and it was open to the book of Ruth because Ruth was a toiler in the fields of Boaz. And the American flag is always presented by a march. At that altar, they joined for refreshments and entertainment, as I've told you. No matter where Rangers meet, whether it's in the state, national, county, or anything, you'll always hear, we met in the Grange. And I don't know whether our Eleanor would like to tell us how she met.
Oh.
I'm gonna pause a little bit.
Oh,
She's gonna tell us how she met her first husband.
we had a drill team. There was 12 boys and 12 girls. And we wore those costumes over there, and we learned to march. The original wife was the one that like marched. Do you remember that?
I thought it was Nita.
I think so.
No.
Was it your reunion?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, two different ones, but Dina is what I remember.
And we were in competition with other Grangers for that too, I think, weren't we?
Yeah.
We go, and Frank, my first husband, took me home from our practice one night. He had his little Model T Ford and my leg.
So different.
It was winter time, he pulled up in the driveway and let me out on his side of the car. And I didn't know it, but there was a icy spot underneath. And I went kaput right on my truck. And I always said if he laughed at me, I'd never marry him. But he picked me up and said what I heard. So that was the beginning of our romance.
As Eleanor mentioned, that was one of the things. Regular Grange met on the second and fourth Saturdays every month. And then we formed a youth Grange that we met on the first and third Saturdays. And that's how it came about with this drill team with Ross Ames, the ag teacher at school. And it was good. We went all over. As I say, we won in the county, and then we went up to Tompkins County, and we beat them out too. And Eleanor made all of the jackets. The boys wore the blue military jackets and the caps, and with white bands, and the girls wore the red, with the red caps and white skirts. And it was kind of scary one night. Edwards was my partner, and we went in their valley and won the county competition. And the next night we were to go to Danby and compete with Tompkins County. Well, we got up there and his mom and dad came, and Edward wasn't with them. And she came and told me, she says, you'll have to march with somebody else tonight. Edward's got a temperature of 106. He had rheumatic fever. And as he says, if it hadn't been for his folks' good neighbor, Cecil Hager, rubbing down the alcohol, he probably wouldn't have made it. And you know, I can't remember who my substitute was, but we won the competition. Ellen and Frank were our leaders, and they were very good leaders. And Ross Ames, if we got on a step, he was right behind you, and he'd step on your heel and make you get a step. He was in the military.
Well, at that time, he was a second lieutenant in the military from ROTC Fort Hill.
Yeah. He was a drill sergeant, and he made us drill. All right. Although membership is declining very much in Gander Grange, we still are trying to hold together. Everybody says why, but It's our contention, the Grange will be there as long as we are. And we're not holding regular Grange meetings, but we don't do anything without consulting with the executive committee and the other officers. So, all right, now I'll go back and tell you about how it really came about. Oliver Hudson Kelly was the instigator of the Grange, Patrons of Husbandry. He was born in Boston, later moved to Minnesota, where he started his mission, traveling back and forth to Washington, D.C. to lobby for help to rural America. He chose 6 others to join him in writing the ritual, which was done before any formal meetings. They formed a trial Grange, which was Potomac #1, and worked on it, presenting and testing rituals, bylaws, and so forth. The 6 were then sent back to their home areas to organize Granges all over the USA. William Saunders was born in Scotland, and he was living in the Northeast, and he designed the National Cemetery of Gettysburg. They all had something to be proud of. John Thompson was born in New Hampshire, and he was in the Civil War Regiment of Vermont. And William Ireland, he was a minister. Reverend Aaron Grosh was a minister. John Trumbull, he was from New Jersey. And then there's our own Francis McDowell of Wayne, New York, who wrote the 7th Degree Ritual. He was a grape grower on Cape Cayuga Lake, and he started Fredonia #1 in the nation. He's still very active, and that was 1868. Kelly's niece, Carolyn Hall, insisted that women should be in the Grange and be equal with the men. Much opposition and hardships were there, but they persevered, and we got the women in. And the same way with Kelly and these men. They weren't always welcomed, and they went from place to place and talked to anybody. And there's one in the book, there's something in there about one instance, a farmer told him to get out and leave. He didn't want anything to do with his ideas. And as Kelly went to leave, the farmer saw a ring on his hand. He says, "Is that a Mason ring?" Kelly told him, "Yes, it is." He says, "I'll join. I'm a Mason." So the Mason's order is somewhat like ours, and they're good. The accomplishments of the Grange was very strong on education issues and the recognition of agriculture with a member on the President's cabinet. They adopted rural-free delivery, postal savings bank system, and later the parcel post delivery, rural electrification, and railroads were monopolizing and not getting into where the rural people were, and they were instigators of getting railroads to rural America. And later on, training schools for leadership. They founded many farm cooperatives. Dairymen's League was formed in Orange County, 1906. And in June 1920, the Farm Bureau and Dairymen's League joined the Grange, and this union became what? Anybody know?
Grange League Federation.
That's right. That's right. The GLF, the Farm Bureau, Dairymen's League, Grange, Dairymen's League, and the Farm Bureau Federation. New York State Grange was formed in 1873 in Syracuse. We have a New York State Grange building, which was built in 1909 at the State Fair. Many exhibits and programs are presented annually there. The Grange also sponsors an ox roast every year at the State Fair, and they serve many hamburgers and ox roast, roast beef, and sandwiches, and different Granges take on a day and do the serving. We have done that a couple times, but so now. Regarding women members, we couldn't do without them. Susan B. Anthony said she could recognize a Grange woman as far as she could see, because of her air of feeling herself just as good as any man. The women have a very important place in Grange. We have a service and hospitality committee, which was,
They cook, right?
we cook and we run it and we clean. And, but they are very active in the service areas of the Grange. Service, they call it service and hospitality. So. All right, now for, I guess, Canada Grange. Oh, the Grange has a lot of legislative resolutions every year. In fact, there is the latest legislative resolutions that we have. And all these resolutions come from the grassroots. You start in your local Grange. If there's something you want brought up, you vote on it in your Grange, and then it's passed on to the Pomona Grange, which is Tyler County Pomona Grange. And there it is discussed, and if it's passed, it goes on to State Grange. And then there are committees appointed for all the things. And the areas covered are agricultural and environment, federal issues, state issues, education, health, taxation, and final fiscal responsibility. And each delegate, when we go to Grange, is assigned one of those committees and meets to discuss approve or disapprove before this delegate body votes on it. If it's passed at State Grange, if it pertains to Grange and the nation, it goes to National Grange. But if it's something we want our legislative body to take to Albany, it is sent on to Albany. Edward and I are going to go as delegates again this year because nobody else wanted to go. So, and Edward usually chooses the agricultural and environment committee, and I choose the education, and my second choice is the health issues. So in October, we'll be going to State Grange. Now for Canada Grange. The first Grange, number 203, was in 1874, and as I told you, it lost interest. And the second, number 1111, in 1907. And present Grange is 1466, and that was chartered in 1920 with 48 charter members, and Edward's Mary's grandfather and grandmother and her two aunts were 4 of the charter members. So we have a backing. The first master, as I told you, was Reed Powers, and the secretary is Stella Personius. And they came up, there were, by the 1930s, there were 300 members. And you go to Grange and have to sit in 3 rows around that Grange hall. It's impressive, wasn't it? Yeah. Another, I'm looking at Renee here. Stella used to tell us that, well, you take your kids with you, because it was a family thing. And Stella used to tell us that there was a rod by the stage, and the Grange hall was usually cold because there was only wood stoves in the corner, and out in the hall there was another wood stove. And they'd bring their babies in the baskets, and they'd hang their babies up on this rod that went across the stage because it was too cold and drafty on the stove. Did you know that, Renee?
Oh, yes, I got my basket at home. I filled it several times.
Huh?
I had filled it several times.
Yeah, I know you did. There's so many things. I'm getting away from things and talking about Stella again. Bless her heart. Those older folks. So I was telling somebody tonight, they were the older folks. But when I stop and think about it, I was the older folks 40 years ago. But you know, when you're younger, you think the older folks are older folks. But when I stop and think,
They are.
most of them were in their the 30s and 40s, but yet they were the older folks to us kids. Yeah. Well, I'll have to tell you about, I'm skipping around, about Halloween parties. Before I was a member of Grange, they had a Halloween party up at the old Winter place. And members probably know where that was, where Marion and Ken Ellenwood
Yeah.
lived. And they had the long second story on the garage. We went through that garage, and of course they had all this stuff for the Halloween party, and then you come down through the hall and go down the stairs. Here, sitting at the stairs, is this great big Indian. Scared the daylights out of me. And that was Stella Personius. But later years, there's another Halloween party I got to tell you about too. We had 4 or 5 kids per then. They were gonna have a Halloween party, and I said, I don't feel like going to Grange. Go on and take the kids. They'll enjoy it. So after they left, this old lady, she went out and got the neighbor's clothes, neighbor's shoes, and everything else, dressed up, got put on a mask, grabbed a earthen jug out of the cellar way, went to Grange. And as I walked into the downstairs hallway, they'd had a supper the night before, and why the carcass of the turkey was whole yet, I don't know. But here I am dressed up as a drunk, and I had this jug in this hand, and I grabbed the turkey in the other hand, and upstairs and wobbled all over. I sat down, and everybody, who's that? They aren't any Grange members. You know who it is? No, they didn't know who it was. Edward came right over in front of me and took my picture. He didn't know who it was. And I can't find that picture.
You were sitting next to Aunt Elma.
Huh?
You were sitting next to Aunt Elma.
Yeah, well, and she didn't know who it
She
was.
was getting back.
And she was getting scared. So we had the Grand March. Of course, I got the best disguised. And when I took off my mask, I wish you could see Nita Sharp, my sister Eleanor, and Eula Richards were judges. And then later on that evening, I went down to Cub Dence's garage, which is down on the corner here. And Mary lived across the street from it at that time. Do you remember it, Mary?
I remember you coming to the door and scaring the dead.
She slammed the door in my face. It was.
I just told Don that before you got to that part.
But went down to see Cub, just to be smart and get some treats. And he says, go over and see Mary. Well, I knocked on the door and I got the door stuck in my face. Then afterwards, I apologized to her. Don't. All right, Edward, I don't know, why don't you tell them about how the Grange building came about? And I do feel a little bit more.
Well, I started out with the National Grange Building in Washington.
All right.
National Grange Building is at 1616 and 8th Street Northwest in Washington, D.C. And it's the only privately owned building in what is known as the Eclectic Square. It was built in 1959 and dedicated in 1960 by President Eisenhower, and Uriah Taft, the Secretary of Agriculture,
Yeah.
dedicated the building, and under her elbow is no,
Well, we'll get these all.
right there, picture.
The Grange building is
When
here.
it gets done there. It's debt-free. They had to remodel it here in the last 2 years, refinish the outside of it, or remortar some of the bricks. that update the elevator and come. That is the income, that is, the offices are rented out, it's 7, 8 stories high, and the Grange uses the top floors, the rest of them are all rented out to different businesses in Washington. Our own building down here was purchased from J.H. Jennings, it was known as a Goodrich store. We purchased from J.H. Jennings in 1924. Up until that time, the Grange had met in the lower old rooms, Oddfellows Hall, and whatnot for 4 years. Grange remodeled it and added a roof, hip roof. And in 46, well, at that time, there was two parts of the land. There was the building, one parcel was just about the size of the building, and then the other land between Moyers and the Grange Hall and around something back is another deed, and it's all Boston Jennings. And in 46, we bought two 6-burner gas stoves, replaced the old wooden cook stove. At that time, put the electric, the hot water heater in. And then 51, I think it was, we took the old wood pipeless furnace out. Up until that time, the downstairs was had with a pipeless furnace, the upstairs was had with 3 wood stoves, wood carried from the cellar up. And George Martin was a janitor and did most of that for a long time. Of course, once in a while, sometimes beating, where we'd have a wood beat and carry wood upstairs so he didn't have to carry it up to the next time. And then in the late 60s, we built an addition on the back and put in indoor restrooms. I think the Tender Grange was the first one to tell me they had inside restrooms.
Still don't have.
And some of them, they also probably still have the outhouse, unless they go across the street to the fire station. And we replaced the roof in 1990. And the outside stairs, we replaced 93, I think it was. We put the outside stair, so fire escape was getting so it just about scared to go down it one person at a time. So we put new treated wood. And about 2000, I think it was, we replaced the old furnace, which had been converted from wood to coal to oil, and now we're going to replace that with 2 new furnaces, one for each floor. So if you want to heat the upstairs, you just turn that furnace on. If you want to heat the downstairs, you just turn that one on. You don't have to. I guess that's about it. About our green building down here. We have rent it out to different associations, parties and whatnot, wedding receptions, anybody wants to use it, so we rent it very cheap.
And I might add that a few years ago, we decided that we needed to do something about replacing the furnaces, replacing the windows and whatnot. So I suggested that maybe we could have square dances. Stuck my neck out because our older Grange members didn't think we ought to have it. Of course, that was because we had the mill stream across from it. And they were, they were afraid people would come over from the mill stream. And so they were against it. But we finally started square dances, and I had them for about 6 years, 6 times a year. And with a grant from Libus, we got our furnace in. Then we decided, after one of the dances, they went to raise the windows and the bomb sashes out of the windows fell out. We were that old, so we decided, well, now it's time to start in on some windows. So the dances have helped out with that. Of course, we always serve refreshments. And we had annual dinners at, like the Lions and the Coin Club and all the farm organizations that were still here. We had that, and we have purchased 5 windows, replacement windows, the final replacement windows. Edward and Marvin installed them. And it was over years ago, well, maybe a month or so, 6 weeks ago, they had a sign, windows were for sale, 20% off, the ones that we had. So I went up to the window department and I said, so how long's the sale? It says it went off today. So he says, don't worry. They probably will have another one and maybe even more percentage off. So we've got the money to buy 5 more windows, and that will, you know, keep us warmer and be able to knit more. How many of you remember the Grange buildings down to the fair? Raise your hand.
Being under the.
No,
Oh,
no.
no.
Nobody remembers the Grange buildings? You know, out where they've got that, for the kids, skateboard thing?
The skateboard is, there was 3 great buildings that in there.
There were 3 long Grange buildings, and we each had probably 12-foot square, and they had shelves in it. And that's something that I miss. They tore them down, and the shelves were for the women. There was baked goods, canned goods, doilies and everything, and they were just piled right full. And it was held in September, and so there was produce to be. And I can recall shocks of green corn that they went out and got, you know, and they would go, you remember it, Ellen?
What I remember is when it was under the bleachers there.
No, this was before.
No.
Well, anyway,
Buildings, the flood of 36, washed the buildings off the foundation. Instead of jacking them up, putting them back on the foundation, they tore them down.
but I still can see those tall shocks of corn, bushels of potatoes, bushels of apples, bushels of beets, bushels of carrots, and all this stuff, all in color. It was beautiful. And
I didn't make they were about 44 by 60, 3 of them.
And everybody did, all the Granges did it. So, it's a shame that things have changed. And I might as well tell you the truth, the Grange has been very upset with the Fair Association last year. It's no longer an agricultural fair. They have it so early, there's no produce ready. So, and I'll have to finish up with something that I've thought a lot about, and this is from one of our Grangers, Mildred Lynn. Probably a lot of them know you. The Grange builds. The Grange is founded upon the symbols of faith, hope, charity, and fidelity. Faith, the springtime of life, is represented by children with warmth of affection. Hope is represented by youth, the summertime of life. Like the rising summer sun, youth are filled with energy to accomplish deeds. Charity is represented by manhood and womanhood, the autumn season of life, in which we gather the fruit and garner the grain that we sowed in youth. We dispense charity for the faults and failings of others and desire to aid those with whom we come in contact. Fidelity is represented by our members mature in years. They are likened to winter because they are almost to the end of the journey. Yet there is much to rejoice over, for they can look back over the years and see how many blessings they have received and enjoy the fruits of their labor. The Grange builds you, your family, your community, and country. It serves as a legislative force, an educational tool, a voice of rural people, a community service organization, a social and recreational vehicle built to serve through its juvenile, subordinate among state and national Grange. And that was written by a dear Granger, Leonard Lynn. I guess that's all, unless you got some questions.
Sounds like a book.
Oh, yeah, I forgot to tell you, anybody wants some interesting reading, there's 4 books up here.
I got 3.
The History of the Patrons of Husbandry, that's by Oliver Hudson Kelly. And in that, I think is where all the letters that he wrote to people. Of course, there wasn't communications, it was, and they wrote with letters. And there's the history of New York State Grange, and another history of the New York State Grange, which is more recent. And the People, Pride, and Progress is another real good book. If you want some real good reading and history, there's 3 of them. Millard and Stuart Powers bought the books and put in the Cantor Library, and Edward and I bought them and put them in the school library. And I don't know whether they're still there or not, because shortly after we had donated the books, they were throwing out this and throwing out that. So I don't know whether they're still there or not. I'll go to school someday to find out.
This is the book of the Founding of the Grange. Starts out written by Kelly himself, and in his travels around in the South and back and forth, as he was contemplating and writing up the work of it. This is the history of New York State from 1873 when it was founded to 1973. And this is the People, Pride, and Progress, which is a book of the Grange as a whole. The Grange was an instrumental in a lot of cooperatives all over the nation. 2 of them here in New York State nearby. GLF was the start in Tompkins County. The Dairyman's League was a grain project in Orange County. It's spread around all over the state. And there's a thing here on Montgomery Ward. In the mid-19th century, deficient and laws protecting consumers, frauds, and swindlers were common. A goal of early Grange members was to pool their strength in their orders in order to search out bargains in the best merchants. Sometimes even the pool was linked up with a less than honest agent. Then came along Aaron Montgomery Ward of Chicago. He had been a traveling salesman throughout rural areas of the Midwest since moving there in 1865, and his idea for a catalog firm marketing directly to rural people evolved while he was bouncing between sales calls in his buggy. Locating the firm in a big city allowed easy access with manufacturers and large wholesalers, permitted the lowest retail prices possible. Customers would order by mail, goods being shipped COD to the nearest rail station. Ward saved some money but was unsuccessful in convincing skeptical friends to invest. In 1871, on his own, he purchased a small amount of goods in preparation for his new business, but the Great Chicago Fire, originating in Casanova Farm, destroyed his Ward's holdings. By August 1872, Ward saved enough more money, and this time was joined by 2 friends who supplied needed capital. The price list was a single sheet listing 163 items, most of which priced at $1 each. The list is circulated only to Grange members, announcing Granger supplied by the cheapest gas house in America, and posted, "We find our business is increasing to such an extent that our present quarters are entirely too small." Actually, the business was only beginning, and the panic of 1873 nearly crushed it. Ward's partners became nervous, and he bought them out. Ward began going to Grange meetings, and in a speech near Bloomington, Illinois, he offered to entertain order takers from McLean County to 3 days and 2 nights in Chicago, all expenses paid, if they pooled an order of $300 or more. Grange master appointed a committee to round up customers and go over his chief. A major blow came with a November 1973 Chicago Tribune editorial, which warned in its headline, "Granger beware." You don't patronize Mugger and Ward Company. They are deadbeats. Ward acted quickly, found the article was written with scanty specialist information and convinced the paper to investigate thoroughly. On Christmas Eve, the Tribune took all back, shouting Ward's policy, allowing customers to refuse payment if they were not satisfied with his goods. It is difficult to see how any person can be swindled or imposed upon by business thus transacted, the Tribune said. Business with Grange members continued to grow, this assortment of goods increased, and bulk orders from Grange secretaries began flooding in. One of the first illustrations used in an early catalog showed a gentleman wearing a regulation TOH hat, all wool. The green hat manufactured especially for Montgomery Warding Company, sold for $1.25. The 72-page 1975 catalog expanded the guarantee by pledging to refund purchase and shipping costs of any goods were not satisfied. In that same catalog, Ward bragged, from a small beginning, we are now the biggest exclusively wholesale house in America, devoting to supplying the customer direct. When we introduced our system in 1872, we were looked upon with scorn by the municipalities and suspicion by the patrons themselves. In a short period of 3 years, we have saved the customer directly with over $1 million and indirectly millions by breaking up monopolies and forcing dealers to sell their goods at fair prices. This Herculean task has been accomplished with the power of the Grange organization. And it just instances of this all through the book, like that. It makes interesting reading, I think, for anybody.
I forgot to tell you, there's many honors that the Grange has got. The charter of the 203 Grange is here, the charter of our Grange is here, and a lot of the ribbons that we've worn, different things. I told you about the jackets. This quilt back here was made in 1962, and each one of the Grangers took a square and put these names onto it, and if you want to have fun, you want to go up there and read those circles. And there's so many
They're
members.
from all over the county.
All over the county, and it's something. And wasn't that Cook found at a yard sale or something at one time? Mary found it at a yard sale. Very disappointing that it got, because after we got it made, it was, we raffled it off. And Hollinsworth was the colored barber, any of you remember him? He won it. And I don't know how this other person got it. She must have gone and bought it from him, because I thought Mary had bought it from Mr. Hollinsworth. And I think she told me different, and that person had put it out for a yard sale. Thank goodness Mary's daughter found it and told us about it. Well, May, you got something to tell about the Grange?
Yeah, it has to do with the Grange. The state Grange is in Cortland. That's where we have the building, it's in Cortland. And right now they're going through a fundraising type thing where they are selling blocks that you can have engraved and things. And my mom and dad don't know this, but they want to know it tonight. There will be a block in that wall that has my mom and dad's name on it, and in honor of their years of service to the Canada Grange in 1466. They were talking, we'll be talking, I said, this is a good time to tell you.
We've
Yeah,
got,
it's a pathway and a wall and things, and there are different blocks. So
thank you, Mom. You never know what that kid's gonna do. She is also one of our 6 children who all belong to the Grange. And she, Darlene, and Cindy all belong to the National Grange along with us. And Lila, when she joined the National Grange out in Connecticut, she went to the Zamoyskis, I remember, and out of the clear, she was selected to be a model for the dress that, made out of cotton, because the cotton was the, in that year, so. We have,
The Grange used to have so many different things, and there was all kinds of contests that the Grange members were involved in. There was sewing contests and different levels of that, you know, whether you were a youth or an adult or whatever. You used to have baking contests and everything, and I've got some pictures down in, it's on, it's where the motel is, around Devil's Elbow, not Devil's Elbow, but,
Sunrise?
yeah, Deep Well, that's one. She's lived across from there.
Peg Draper.
Yes.
Draper.
Thank you.
Yeah. She was a Gridley.
Yeah.
She was a Gridley.
that was her home where I got scared to death.
Ah.
Peg was ahead of the committee, and I won the state thing to go on to the state with a dress that I had made. And when you did that, when you sent it on to them, you had your picture taken. I still have the picture, standing on Peg's stairway. They had a photographer come in and took the different people's pictures, so I still have my picture in my green checkered dress. Standing on Peg's stairway. So, I mean, it was a lot of things that just don't happen now, okay? Things are different. I mean, that's what we had growing up, was Grange. And, you know, that the kind of things that you did. School didn't have as many activities as they do today for the kids to be into, so we were in these other organizations, 4-H, Grange, and all that sort of thing.
I wanted to ask, was Peg Gridley Draper, she must have been in the Grange in Candor when
Oh,
she
yeah.
was young.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
where she,
Her
that's where
folks
she
and I-
started, right? Before she married.
Almost like her grandfolks.
Yeah.
But
And her father, I know at the Gridleyville crossing there, he was the, what do you call it? Caretaker of the railroad, or, you know, had to make sure the light changed or whatever. And she had shinnied up that. She was just a little short lady. And she shinnied when she was a little kid. And shinnied up, her father couldn't find her. And she was up that thing and changed the light to green or red or whatever. And she said she got her fanny. And she was telling about the drill teams. I used to visit her a lot down there because she lived across from my daughter. And she was telling the fun they had, changing their clothes. They'd be going to these drill team competitions and going to other Granges. And they'd be up on the landings on the second floor or something. They'd go out there to change, you know, at night. And they'd be changing their clothes and everything and about falling off and everything. And just the excitement of all that and how strict their drill, you know, sergeant or head of their drill team was, you know, and how, you know, they were so good at things, you know. And then about going, when she was a kid, going in the sleigh, because that, like you said, that was their entertainment. And her parents, they'd tuck them down in the sleigh with all these blankets over them, the little kids, and they'd go to their Grange, and then they'd fall asleep on the piano or wherever these little kids were, you know, with their parents. And when they were headed home at night, they'd be tucked all back down in the blankets in the sleigh, you know. And she told me so many stories about going to the Grange.
it's coming back about Frank Sharp. You all know Frank Sharp, probably. He was also a grandkid. And Joy Zamoyski, Joy and Steve and Edward and I. Joy had 10 children, I had 6. And most of them were of that age that you had to take them to Grange because you always went with them. And that Frank Sharp would sit across the hall from us and roll pennies out, remember Lila? Roll pennies out into the middle of the hall to get those little girls with a patent leather shoe and go clickety clickety. And that's not the only thing. You never see Frank take a piece of cake out the corner of a cake pan. You ain't going to eat somebody else's dirt. You know, you remember these old folks, and they were honest. They told you. And Howard was, some of your folks were Gridleys, weren't they? Weren't your folks?
Yeah, I married one of the Gridley
Yeah, one of the
girls.
Gridleys, yes. Was Peg Gridley A cousin?
Okay, she probably
Yeah, I can't tell you exactly.
Yeah,
There was two Charles Goodman, one was
Yeah.
Charles L. and one was Charles F. Charles F. was the farmer,
yeah.
but Charles L., his wife was Murray, and I don't know, I can't tell you what her maiden name is.
Yeah, Murdy Gridley. And why could she play the piano? Well, yeah. Well, talking about older folks,
Could you only join if you were a farmer?
at first, it was farmers, but then later on, anybody who was interested in agricultural and rural America.
It kind of reconditioned and showing that any farm or rural interested in legislation will not be joined. And Grange is open to anybody to join now. We welcome, I'd like to see some new blood get in, take over.
What year did you go to California on the train?
1988.
88.
That was the 100th year of Junior Grange.
How,
They had a great celebration up there that year.
about how many members are there now in Candor?
You're looking at
There's 43, and the ones that go are here. Few of us. Well, we don't, but as I say, we have.
How many are on the books, Mark?
43. Half of them are over 50-year members. Most of us are 60, 70-year members. And talking about membership, this,
to do.
huh?
What are your dues?
$20 a year, it all goes to State Grange. We
State and national.
started out at $1.20 a year. And for years, it was $2.40. And then we went to 6. Huh?
Then it went to 325.
Yeah. Gradually came up till now it's 20, and we have to pay $5 a quarter to State Grange. So, and this is an application for membership. This-
Supported Granges pay the dues to the State Grange, and the State Grange in turn reimburses, send on to the National Grange. That's what keeps the building going, National Grange going, is the dues that goes down and what income from the building of Washington. That's covering about 25 to 30% of
I
the
expect
national
it's
budget
gonna
is
go
right
up.
from the income from that building.
A lot of other Granges charge more, but
But one time there was 30 Granges in Tioga County, and now we're down to only 5.
there were never a little nook there is.
I didn't realize there was that many, so I went through
I get
the book, in the index where it listed all the Granges, what year, or what number they were, and what year they were.
What are the 5, Ed? What are the 5?
North Barton, Spencer, Alta Valley, Candor, and Goody Sullivan.
Okay.
There were 14 when we joined. And that was Tioga, which is Straits Corners. Oak
Goody
Leaf,
Sullivan is now what was.
Oak Leaf down in Tioga Center.
Goody Sullivan is what was now was. Going to Berkshire, North Valley, Flemingville. Most of them are all in,
Appalachian, Campville,
yeah, they're all in Goody Sullivan.
Tioga Center. This was interesting, looking through the books several years ago when I wrote the first article I read. To the officers and members of Candor Grange, number 203, Patrons of Husbandry. I, Alonzo Newman, a resident of the town of Candor, county of Tioga, state of New York, being 43 years of age and by occupation a farmer, respectfully petition to be initiated and enrolled as a member of your order. Now, who do you think this is? Is the only,
Dad?
huh?
Is that your dad?
That's not my dad, that is my great-grandfather. And his name is Alonzo Newman. Was I ever surprised? I didn't know that. Well, you see, my dad was Glenn, his father was Abe, and Alonzo was his grandfather. His grandfather. So this is my great-grandfather when he joined the Grange in June 15th, 1888. And would you believe this is the only thing I found like this? And it's my great-granddad. That's why we have Newman Road over there, you know. That the town was going to name Henderson Road. I went to a Grange meeting, and I said, over my dead body. And they says, what do you got to say about it? I said, well, we've got maps of 1732, and it's Newman Road then. And I said, my great-grandparents settled over there, and that's why it's Newman Road. And you know, they kept it. But we never would have been to that town board meeting if it hadn't been for Mary and Kelsey. They were going to name our road Amon Road because of Amon's big farm down there. He came down, storming down to our house one day. Eddie and Florence, will you go up to town board with me? You know what they're going to do? They're going to call this Amon. We were always the back road to Hubbardtown. And he says they're going to change this to Amon Road. He says, well, my grandparents settled here first, which they did. And we went up, and sure enough, they named it Kelsey Road instead. So we're quite proud that we have Kelsey Road. Is there any more questions? There's lots of things to look at. This is our throw, like Pender has a throw. This is our throw of the Grange. And please go up and look at all of those signatures on
Oh,
that
I
list.
might mention that picture back there of the lower hose roof, the building on the left is the Grange Hall, it looks about the time the Grange bought it,
What year did they buy it?
1924.
There was a store before that.
Yeah, Goodrich store. Well, anybody else got to tell other stories about the Grange? I'm sure you all have heard them.
Yeah, but now somebody talked about, I went to a calling hours and right. I forget the guy's name is now. And the one was actually from Gander, and she said Ross Gelman was part of the band.
Rob has got on, I take off, he puts them on,
Just
take it down
last
to
week.
£1 a minute.
Said
Back and pulls it up, hangs it up there.
And that's where we really got to know John and Betty. And so I wanted to read